Hello, everybody, people of QnQ. This is the Pokebot podcast, episode 1, technically, because the last episode was 0. It is me and Carl, and we are joined by special guest, Teresa Pie Giraffe has joined us.
Glad
say
to be
hello,
here.
everyone. Say hello.
Hello.
Oh, and then I forgot. Let me get this going. I've got some visual aid. I don't think Teresa or Carl can see it, but I have some soap cutting ASMR on the side here, as to maintain the attention spans. But we're here to just kind of talk about all the matches of week 1, some of our thoughts and opinions on them. I wrote little recaps for every single match, in case people didn't watch them. Hopefully this will be kind of accelerated compared to last week's Yap session. And then stick around. At the very end, we are doing awards every week, so you're definitely going to want to see those. And then right after that, Pi is going to show off a Pokemon War system that she made, which is crazy. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started with League A, and we're just going to go in order. So we started off with Dorm versus Hivy. We put both of these teams in the second highest tier together. So based on our week 1 vibes, it was kind of anything goes. It ended up being a really dynamic matchup featuring 2 different teams who both have a very defined Trick Room archetypes, but different ones. We've got Sunroom and we've got Psyspam. Funnily enough, in the match, neither team spec'd super hard into Trick Room. Blood Moon was obviously the talk of the town after the draft and is something that everybody's afraid of. But we ended up seeing it have no impact, being a complete non-factor. I knew going in that its low special defense can be a big issue against teams like this. So I was kind of hoping to see Assault Vest Blood Moon. It can also learn Snarl, so that's kind of a crazy thing. But we ended up not seeing that, and it kind of folded. However, once Malamar entered the equation, Hivy was overwhelmed by its specifically really, really good typing and coverage for this matchup. And we saw the Squid overtake the match quickly and clutch out games 2 and 3. Carl, did you have anything to say about this match? Anything interesting?
I definitely think you hit the nail on the head. I do think the absence of Trick Room was particularly noticeable. It did end up coming out in game 2. I'd say to Dorm's benefit, but I wouldn't really say it was incredibly influential in a lot of the games, and I think that's just because both of these teams feel like they're incredibly fast paced at the moment, and giving a free turn to either Psyspam or that nasty Sun team would be devastating. And obviously Malamar did a lot of work. I think definitely underestimated Pokemon, especially given that game 3 with the switcheroo of the Choice Scarf onto it, but definitely I feel like Hivy definitely underestimated its capability to use that to its advantage.
Yeah, it seems like Hivy was hoping that would cripple it, and it ended up just kind of snowballing it completely. I thought it was interesting because in game 1, which Hivy won, off of the back of an incredible turn 1 switcheroo play, a perfectly played turn 1, where they switcherooed their Choice Scarf onto the Farigiraf, who set Trick Room, so was then locked into Trick Room, and then reversed the Trick Room with Indeedee. So it was one of the best turn 1 switcheroo plays I've seen. And then in game 3, switcheroo a Choice Scarf onto Malamar, who was just free to spam Superpower and Snowball out of control. So it was the duality of switcheroo plays.
Yeah,
there.
it definitely. I definitely applaud the switch up and piloting on both ends, because Hivy definitely took advantage of that positioning early and like made like incredible like momentum play in the first game. But I think Storm deserves props for seeing that and managing to pivot out of trying to force Trick Room against this team and just utilizing Malamar here, which definitely pulled more than its weight.
Yeah, I think Malamar's typing here, like by default, was so strong because if I remember correctly, I don't think we saw Hawlucha come, which means it basically wasn't threatened by anything. And I think that was proof where in game 1, where Dorm tarried it, Dorm lost. And then in game 2 and 3, when it stayed as a Dark Psychic type, which is fantastic for this matchup, it just won pretty easily. It was never really threatened. So yeah, I think it definitely was a case of I don't think Hivy was particularly expecting Malamar to be the issue. Probably a lot of prep and calcs for Blood Moon, I could imagine. And then it ended up being a pretty big hole in the team. So I thought it was a really cool matchup to see.
Yeah, I will say I do think it managed to use its Terra to its benefit in later games. Hawlucha did actually come in game 2, I think. But I do think Malamar managed to use its Terra better in the second and third games against Gallade specifically, which otherwise would have like heavily chunked, if not outright eliminated it with Sacred Sword.
True, yeah. Better time Terras for sure in game 2 and 3, which stole it. So moving on there, we've got gnocchi and Totter. So based off of our tier list ranking, we would have predicted Totter to take this, but we did see it taken by gnocchi. But it was close. It was another 3-game set. I think Pelipper, our Chaladon, usually like completely dismantles traditional fire, water, grass, which is why it's so good. So gnocchi knew he was going to have to like cook something up, and he very much did. He elected to not even bring his 20-point ape, which is crazy, possibly anticipating that Totter would have heavily invested into prep for it. And judging by the fact that Totter brought special Basket Legion, which to me feels like a counter specifically for Ape, so you don't have to worry. Like, Last Respects is a crazy move, but it doesn't have that like upfront pressure against Ape, and a lot of Apes run bulk up as well, so I think special Basket Legion is better suited to deal with an Annihilate, so I kind of feel like that's why it came. Game 1, we saw gnocchi had to invest a very early Terra into his Gyarados, and we see that's punished, and positioning around a sweeping Gyarados is proven to be too difficult, and it just kind of didn't work out. But gnocchi adapted really, really well, and shows how deadly Arboliva can be when positioned correctly. In Game 3 in particular, I really wanted to shout out like some absurdly strong, really well-played positioning and weather control to like protect his Arboliva on like back-to-back-to-back turns. Just like correctly changing the weather, managing his Terra to keep it really safe and let it do its thing. And then Arboliva and Gyarados were free to just sweep and take the set. So I think this was a match that showed like really, really good steering from gnocchi, where like he adapted game to game, kind of knew what he needed to do coming in, and then even when it didn't work out game 1, like really properly adapted and recognized that like that Terra Dragon Arboliva was going to be a menace. What are your thoughts on this match?
Okay, my first thought is that gnocchi is never gonna let me hear the end of this. But that aside, I definitely think it was a very dynamic match for sure. I will say my big surprise going into this match was Arboliva. I definitely underestimated its capability to absolutely punch holes through Totter's team in given the circumstances, and I do suppose that's fair enough. I think it's interesting that Totter didn't bring Sinistra as well, which is one of like the four Pokemon we kind of assumed he would auto bring.
Yeah,
but definitely in this matchup it would be the wrong decision to make as well. It's like given the amount of things on this team that shut that down from the giraffe rig even to like just our Boliva at base and like Ninetales Alola have heavily threatening it. There's just not a lot of opportunities for it to like do well here. And obviously, if gnocchi brought Annihilate, it would have been really shifty to try to get it to work.
Yeah.
I definitely think gnocchi, while gnocchi definitely, I believe, got a good a good amount of momentum with Arboliva the second game while still managing to conceal its item, which I think is massive, so that he could hit Totter with the weakness policy.
The weakness policy.
And clean up, yeah.
Yeah, that is a really good point, and specifically a really interesting thing about like draft closed team sheets is like information as value, and being able to conceal some things where like you still saw so much value from Arboliva in game 2 without even its item active, so then you still have an X factor coming into game 3, and then we saw what that weakness policy go up, and I think it got a Giga Drain at some point to just go straight up to full HP, and then it was just like, well, there it is, it's over.
I did check this, and with, like specifically with gnocchi, I don't believe that the Muddy Water miss in Game 3 killed the Arboliva if it hit. Arboliva is really, really bulky, but
I was wondering that. I never did run that calc, but yeah, I was like, I could see Arboliva winning this because it's not like female Basculegion Muddy Water is like doing crazy amounts on a resisted hit.
Yeah.
Especially assuming it was Swift Swim and not adaptability.
Yeah. I think like Arboliva and Ninetales Alola definitely put in a lot of work, but also I do want to shout out gnocchi for just piloting them especially well with like Ninetales just coming in on all the right turns and just applying a ton of pressure on things like Pelipper, and also just doing a lot to keep the team alive, while Arboliva was a menace that I did not account for.
Yeah, I was genuinely like absurdly impressed by Noki's piloting and like weather control specifically in Game 3. So I totally agree with that. And Teresa, feel free to chime in at any point, but I do believe this match is significant for your war system because I think Arboliva tore it the fuck up, correct?
Yes, indeed. Between both leagues, Arboliva is the only Pokemon to get over 5 effective kills this match, and in fact got over 5.5, which leads not only League A but also League B if I was mixing those two leagues together. Malamar from the last match, about over half a kill behind on that leaderboard.
So yeah, there's your validation, Noki. You went crazy. Arboliva was a menace and demolished Teresa's Pokemon War system. So yeah, congrats.
I will say it's definitely a lot of like flexible building that he was able to leave his first pick off and still like pilot the rest of his team successfully into definitely a team that would look intimidating on first glance.
Yep.
I'm excited to see what he cooks up for future weeks.
Me too. All right, moving on to an insane matchup and an insane set. We have Aury versus Square, which was another 2-1. This one in favor of Aury, but it was close. So, yeah, just insane. Coming in, we knew that Aury would want a Perish Trap, but Square has an access to a lot of things that can make that really difficult, namely Dragapult, who refuses to be trapped and can deal absurd damage while waiting for the timer to tick. In game 1, we see Aury quickly deal with Square's like Frailer Mons up front. Like immediately, I think it was Dragapult was dealt with right away, and then Galvantula, I believe, was dealt with like within like 3 or 4 turns. Which then lets them do what Perish wants to do, and Perish the last 2 Mons, and then just kind of rotate until that goes off. I do believe Perish only actually ended up getting 1 kill, but it did get a kill, so Perish is on the board. In game 2, we saw the power of Squares Terra poison Dragapult, which was really interesting, and just going purely hyper offensive, and like completely sweeped Aury's slower paced team. And then game 3 ended up being like so close, where it was like you could see both team styles of like a defensive and Square's like hyper offense, but ultimately some really smart choices in the builder just like barely eked Aury out of a very hard fought win. What do you have to say about this crazy match?
I think one thing I absolutely want to shout out is a lot of the creative uses of Terra on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
the Terra bug Galvantula in game 3 especially, but also absolutely shout out to Terra Poison Dragapult for more than pulling its weight and like demolishing game 2. I don't know if I agree with Terra Bug, but I definitely think it. I definitely think Galvantula was definitely an interest. Like doubling into Bug Stab is definitely an interesting pick. I'm not sure if it really hits much besides Goss, unfortunately.
I was gonna say I'm gonna assume the Terra Bug Buzz had to be a Goth calc. I would assume like maybe it just misses it without the Terra Bug, and then it can pick it up with Terra Bug or something. Because I do agree. I think Terra Bug it's hard to maintain your rock weakness when you're against a Glamora. It's hard to maintain your fire weakness when you're against an Incin. So yeah, I questioned it a little bit. I think game 3 could have possibly maybe gone different with a different Terra, but it's hard to say.
I feel like that's a possibility, although looking at what it would be used for, I think there's still I'm wondering if Terra Stellar might have been better, honestly.
Yeah, I could see that. Regardless, I was astonished with how much damage it was doing. I mean, like, I have never... I mean, I could say it. I've never seen Galvantula used in VGC ever. So I straight up had no idea how hard it would hit. All I knew is it was Compound-Eyes Thunder. And in Game 2, I mean, we saw it. It went pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, I wonder, according to Teresa's... Yeah, I thought so. I was like, I'm pretty sure it did much better than
top
Dragon
5
Ball.
in League A.
Look at that!
Yeah. It definitely pulled a lot of weight. When I saw it in at the top, I was like, oh, this is the Electroweb speed control of the team.
Yeah.
But it definitely... Square definitely proved it could be like an offensive presence.
Yeah, Square elected for Hydrogen Bomb, Galvantula, which we did was very exciting. Funny shout out to Incineroar Knockoff doing 99% to Weird Deer twice. I don't think it was Sash, because I never saw the text that said it just barely hung on or whatever. I think I could be wrong.
It was leftovers.
Yeah, so that was a roll twice. So that was pretty crazy.
Thank you, Incineroar. You are the worst Pokemon of all time.
That's my goat. Not too much. But yeah, I think like to me the set like it was really cool. I think it showcased a lot of like what makes draft really cool. Where it was like 2 defined different styles, and each of them took a game off of each other, and then game 3 ends up being like a compromise of those styles. And like game 3 was a narrow margin. It really came down to the fact that like Primarina had safety goggles, and that was disguised all the way up until game 3. And then like it was a single spore where it ended up mattering, where like I'm pretty sure if Prim goes to sleep there, Aury loses. So that's just like that's a huge testament to like closed team sheets and keeping your cards close to your chest and not revealing your items. because I think it did end up getting Aury the set win there. But no, it was really crazy, and like even like the games, game 1 was like so dominant from Aury, game 2 was so dominant from Square, and then game 3 was like just so tense. So I thought it was a really, really cool set to watch, and we got 1 Parish kill. Yippee!
Woo!
Add a quarter to the Parish jar.
Yeah, definitely shoutouts to Aury for managing to keep like have such a seemingly straightforward and dedicated plan, but still managing to include enough mix-ups and keep certain sets under wraps until the time's right. I'm definitely like, it is Parish Trap like at the end of the day, but they managed to play these rounds really offensively when they needed to, and I think that got them the win.
Yep, super cool. Excited to see, very excited to see like how that team specifically changes, because I don't think Aury's ever going to bring the same 6. Like it seems super matchup dependent for them, whereas some of these other teams are like, okay, I could bring the same core and just change my builds. I feel like Aury has to be really like adapt really intensely each week, so that'll be really cool to see. Rounding out League A here, we have the only 2-0, and it was kind of a blowout. You can see the differential here. It was a 5 differential. So it was a result of one of the scarier teams coming out of draft, that being Hayes' team. We were horrified of it. Yeah. I think we put Hayes not in the top tier, but just below it. And I do feel like now seeing how the team functions, he's probably up in Queenly Queerly even. He's probably hopped the tier. Yeah.
I wouldn't use that one.
we were being conservative. Mainly I was being conservative, but I think we can unofficially throw Hayes up into the top tier there. But yeah, going into this, I don't even think this is like saying like, oh, like Brett played bad. Brett's like 3 most expensive mons here have awful matchups into Hayes. Sneasler's biggest op is Goldango. Rillaboom hates to see D-Knight. It literally can't do anything against it. And then Gambit, like, it's okay, like, against Dango, but in general, it doesn't like a lot of what's on this team. So I was worried for Brett, like, going into it. In game 1, we saw Brett open with a really, really awesome cheese kill on a Dango, where I don't remember what he disguised it as.
It was comfy.
Yeah, he faked out like a comfy Rillaboom lead, which is like a pretty like realistic normal lead, and then the comfy shadow balled and killed Dango right off the bat. So I was like, oh wow, okay, so Brett probably just has game 1 here, because now Sneasler is like unlocked, right? But Hayes like played his ass off out of it, had a really, really good Terra call and like really well played Tailwind support, and then we saw Berserker end up being like the actual raid boss, which was really cool to see. Ended up cleaning up all the remaining threats and then left Dragonite in a 1v1 that he could never lose. I think it was D-Knight versus Rillaboom at the end. So after an insanely close game 1 with small margins for error, we then see game 2 won off of a single turn 1 read and then a focus miss actually hitting for once. And then Dango quickly shows why it's a 20-point mon. It was really solid gameplay from Hayes, who wasn't rattled by the Zoro cheese game 1. Like, that easily could have just psyched him out, and then he just started thinking about the next game. But he played his way out of it.
Shout out to the Choppleberry doing fuck all.
Yeah, that was so fun. The Choppleberry and still dying. Gambit still dying through a focus blast. That was very funny. But I want to shout out, like, I think for what Brett had coming in here, he honestly put together the best thing he could have. And, like, he played to his outs. It just, like, wasn't enough. I don't know if this would require, like, a lot to ever win this matchup.
Yeah, game one, he did a good job sniping Goldango, but just, like, the rest of the team kind of, like, managed to like claw its way back and get him. And then game 2 showed exactly why he needed to take that snipe on Goldango in the first place, because holy shit, the cheese string.
Yeah. And then like, yeah, I mean, even looking at Teresa's stats here, I do think this is pretty accurate, where like it showed Whimsicott showed its relevance, right? Where it's like Dango was just sniped and died and hit the floor game 1, and then Whimsy turned Berserker into a carry because it doesn't matter, because when you have the support set that Whimsy does, you can kind of just put anything next to it and you're probably fine. It was like one Steelmon died, so we just brought out the other Steelmon, and then you have the Fairy Steel coverage and, you know, still did the same thing. So Whimsy, there's a reason it's, I think, the most expensive Tailwind setter in this draft league, for a very good reason. And shout out Berserker, who I do think, if I remember correctly, it cost four or like 5. It's cheap. And I think we talked about that in our draft review, where we were like, Berserker seems like a really good, affordable mon, and it went crazy in this matchup. So, shout out to
yeah,
that.
it was 4. That's absolutely.
Another thing about Berserker, if you head back to the sheet, it's the only mon up at the top here who only played in 1 game.
Wow.
Which shows how effective it was that it was able to rack up this many.
Yeah, that's crazy, actually. I mean, it makes sense, because it was like, it literally took game 1, it survived, it got 1 clutch Terra, and then I think it just O-code everything it touched. So, that's pretty crazy. Big shouts to Berserker, and big shouts to Hayes, and condolences to Brett, but I'm sure he'll rally. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on to League B, which, now we get to reveal this. So, I'm involved in 3 of these leagues, and so that's 12 matches in a week 1, right? 11 out of 12 of the people on the left side won. So Leo versus Sai is the only match where the left side didn't win. So I'm just saying, there's apparently a blue side advantage in Pokemon. Crazy.
The woke left keeps winning.
This is the future liberals want. So, anyway, speaking of liberals, Willow and we have Willow versus Phoebe. So I think we talked about in draft review where we were like, I don't think Phoebe has a lot of answers to Sun. And I do believe that was illustrated. I think Hisui and Typhlosion was always going to be a pretty big issue for her coming into this. I think Willow was completely aware of this, right? And used it completely to her advantage. In game 1, we saw like really smart adaptations from both players, but notably Willow's Hatterene lead with Tailwind, which is not how it's usually played, was like a flawless way to clear the way for Typhlosion to clean up. Mainly, obviously, like the main Typhlosion checks being like maybe an Assault Vest Crocodile, Dragapult Natural Resist, both of which Hatterene can just Dazzling Gleam and threaten out. In game 1, we saw a really good lead adaptation from Phoebe, and it did force Willow to play from behind for a little bit. However, Torkoal ended up being a fucking menace, just spamming Will-O-Wisps and disabling physical threats. Spamming Earthquake, which, like, they weren't doing that much, but basically everything Phoebe had at some point was weak to it, and it was just providing constant chip. Porygon 2 from Willow took a month of Sundays to kill, and Phoebe's position was eventually weakened enough that Typhlosion could just come in and clean up. I thought it was honestly a really strong showing from both of them, but I was particularly impressed by Willow's, like, lead game 1 and just game plan adaptation in general.
Yeah. I think ultimately just there weren't a lot of good answers to Typhlosion, Hisui, and Typhlosion, and Typhlosion did just like come in and like click Shadow Ball in game 1 and Eruption in game 2,
yep,
and not really suffer any consequences for it. But I will say I do applaud like I do applaud Willow's positioning to get it to where it was comfortably able to clean up whatever was left.
Yeah.
I definitely think of Flamigo honestly managed to pull its weight in game one, especially.
Mhm.
I think I overlooked that one a lot um during the initial video I made of it, but during this game it definitely like put in a lot of work and brave birded like every relevant
Yeah.
thread to death pretty much.
And set the tailwind, which like it's
Yeah.
really cool to see like that game one, which the game one lead from Willow is what I was really really impressed with. From like a VGC player perspective, like I see Willow's team and I'm like, okay, we are going Trick Room, and then I see Hatterene Flamigo. I'm still assuming we're going Trick Room, and then you press Tailwind on what I presume is like a fast-ish Hatterene. And like we saw that's what Phoebe thought was going to happen, because if I remember correctly, she led with an Imprison Weirdeer, who was presumably imprisoning Trick Room. I could be making that up, but I think that happened at some point in one of these games, and I think it was the game one leads. Which, I mean, that's just like such a smart adaptation from Willow, and like I just feel like Willow really thought about the leads here, and like basically had game one won in the builder and in the team preview.
I definitely want to shout out the turn 3 of game 1 where Hatterene Terra normaled and avoided a Phantom Force only to be like hit by the Rilla double.
Yeah, I think
ultimately I don't think it mattered that much because it like High Flare just came in and cleaned up, but it was definitely a good play from both sides, I think.
I think that's like proof of like Willow. It feels like to me that Willow thought about every interaction that could have gone on in this match, and like I think the Terra normal on Hatterene, which is not its typical Terra type, is like an exact like it shows that Willow was really thinking about what threatens Hatterene specifically within the context of this match. Also, shout out to like the Willow was spamming Torkoal in game 2. Like it landed a Willow on like every critical target. It landed a Willow on Dragapult before the Dragapult could Terra Fire, which is like catastrophic. Like there wasn't when it was like an attrition game, like landing a Willow on a physical mon before it can Terra Fire, which presumably it was there to like not get burned by the Sun team. So like that was pretty crippling.
I usually hear it like shortened to Wisp, but it's really funny for you to keep talking about Willow landing Willows.
Oh, true. I didn't even think about that. Willow landing Wisp. Sorry. Let me tab over to League B here so we can take a quick
look
at
the stats. It's the same story. Torkoal is absolutely the MVP of this match. 2.69 effective kills in only a single game played, which is pretty cool. Pretty good for that mon.
And I was gonna say, mind you, a supportive mon, which is why Teresa's war system here is so cool. Because like Torkoal only got 1 kill. So
Torkoal only got 1 kill. If you look at the assist tab here, this shows how much has changed from just the regular damage due to support actions, and Torkoal is by far has the biggest lead on this stat out of our League B Pokemon.
Yeah, it's super cool that it could shout that out, because I definitely walked away going, damn, I feel like Torkoal was the best mon in that set. So it correctly identified. All right, moving on to the only blue side loss. Suspicious, something I'm calling rigged. We've got Leo versus Sai. So 2 teams that we both had our doubts in. They were both in the I forgot what our bottom tier was called. It was either Let Them Cook or Ate Some Crumbs. I don't remember. Or maybe it was
bottom tier was early merge boot.
Oh, it was early merge boot. Okay, so we've got 2 early merge boots. So I feel like coming into this was the match where I straight up had no idea what neither of them would do, what either of them would bring. Like, I think either of them could have brought any of their 10. So it was cool to see, like, I think there was probably less prep they could do for specific threats here, and they just kind of had to make generally strong sets, which was really interesting to see. In game 1, it starts off with Leo playing like a really, really impressive heavy pivot style, which is something you don't see too much in VGC. You see Incineroar parting shot spam, and you see Balance like pivoting a lot, but this almost felt like more reminiscent of like singles to me, like a singles pivot team where you're pressing U-turn and Volt Switch and stuff like that. Floor just sat there and was unkillable. and just kind of like slowly picking up little bits of chip with all these pivot moves, and then had like the perfect coverage needed to clean up the game, where it could snipe the Salamence and the Weezing. I think it had Moonblast and Psychic, or a Psychic move.
Psychic Noise, yeah.
Yeah, Psychic Noise. And then in game 2, we see Sai yet again on the back foot right away after the sneaky Ice Punch from Metacham, Oko Salamence, which there is a reason, times 4 weakness mons are scary, because randomly an Ice Punch from a Metacham just kills you. But I think Sai recognized they needed like a miracle to come back in, and they risked literally the entire game on an 80% accurate Rockhead, hit it, and was rewarded for it, instantly removing the Rotom, who was a massive threat to Arcanine, and really their only chance to win the game was by removing it. With that out of the way, Sai plays some very smart offense to scrape their way into a game 3. And then game 3 starts off with a really volatile, intense lead. I remember like the Mons came out and I was like, oh god, like this could go any way. We see a really, really well-timed Swampert swap. It buys Sai enough time to survive some unfortunate full paras, and ultimately a perfect Terra Steel on Salamence allows it to sweep the rest of Leo's team once Metacham is encored into Trailblaze, which was huge. It was a really exciting set to watch. And in general, I had no idea what to expect coming in, and I felt like I was pleasantly surprised even then. What did you think about this set, Carl?
I think that summed it up pretty well. Yeah, I think I'm definitely a bit confused, I think, at I would say the lack of wisp from honestly either side. I think both teams had a lot of like physical mons that were incredibly threatening into them, that I think both teams had like a good deal of like solid whispers, and like Sableye, Rotom, or
Geezing gets
Weezing, and even Cinderace if they had to, and just both games usually just ended up having a lot of like physical mons like trading blows and taking kills left and right. Leo brought a Thunder Wave on the Rotom instead, which definitely I think was definitely good for like speed control, but in game 3 I feel like that kind of didn't really do what it needed to, and Salamence was just able to sweep with Terra Steel.
I think it was interesting because there was 2 full paras on Sableye back to back in game 3, but it showed that like that happens and it's unfortunate, but like there's not as much value that you can get with a T-Wave as opposed to a Will-O-Wisp, where you are always having damage and you are always getting some chip in. Whereas this T-Wave, like, you full para to support Mon a couple times, but it ultimately doesn't change the result, right? So I do agree. I think like a Wisp on Rotom here could have been like huge.
Absolutely.
But I mean, shoutouts to game 3. I mean, like, honestly, it was looking like for a bit there that game 3 Leo was going to take it. But the, really, really well timed and a perfect Terra from Salamence, and then the encore into the Metacham, who once you like cleared the Metacham out there, I don't think there was anything that threatened the Terra Steel Salamence at that point. So I thought that was a really well played by Sai to like identify what needed to be cleared to free that up. And was just I remember there was like a turn where I think it was like Encore Trailblaze Terra Steel that same turn, where I was like, oh damn, they won this off of this turn, and that's cool to see. Tabbing over here to Teresa's stats, we see a Swampert and a Salamence, both topping this league.
In fact, Sai has 3 Pokemon here in the top 10, which you were talking about smart offense earlier. It seems like Sai really rotated all 3 of them in to get a lot of good damage in during those 3 games.
Yeah, I think Swampert here is really cool to see because like it wasn't taking much damage and it was just like constantly chipping stuff, and that is like the style that Leo was playing, which is like this pivot heavy, is you win that by attrition, where you're slowly punishing these things for coming in, never like hitting an immunity or anything like that. So that is really cool to see. And then Salamence obviously was like most of the offensive threat, and I think it set up Tailwind a couple times too. So it's, and then with Intimidate value and whatnot as well, I think definitely Salamence is up here to prove why it's such a valuable mon in draft. It's so flexible. It has Intimidate, it has Tailwind, and then it can be offensive as well. All right, moving on, we have Treb versus Dicy. Treb was one of the only two teams that we put in the Queenly Queerly even tier before we retconned and put Hayes in there. So we had high expectations coming in. It looked like Goldango and T-Tar could both prove to be a big problem for the team, though. So it'd be interesting to see how both players adapted. Game 1 is pretty cleanly played from Treb, with Dragonite showing off why it's such a menace in draft, with a I hate this set. It's Tailwind Encore. It's like Tailwind Encore is already ugly in VGC, even uglier in closed team sheets. It proved to be like a perfect support for Terra Stellar Excadrill, which I remember when I was watching this, I was like, wait, like support D-Knight Excadrill is like so fun and I want to play that, and my team in my draft league is boring and I'm never this creative, and I just really liked it. Game 2 showed some lead adaptations from both players, but ultimately Treb tried too hard to execute Snorlax, and was punished for it really hard by air/spamming Yanmega. An unfortunate Tauros swap into Scald results in Snorlax taking way too much damage and just not having the juice to sweep, which took us to Game 3. And then in Game 3, we saw Scale Shot D-Knight just completely take over the game. It never missed a single one. And I think it rolled max, which I'm sure it's loaded dice, but I think that still gets you 4 or 5. And I think it rolled max every time, and it never missed. And because of that, it managed to keep up with the speed boost and Mega, because it's hitting a Scale Shot every turn. Notably, T-Tar never came, which I thought was interesting. And then Goldango was only used once. I'm guessing this was just like Excadrill pressure just being too much.
Yeah.
But
Excadrill came to the first game and the third game, and I feel like with like I think Excadrill just immensely pressured T-Tar and Dango a lot, and those were just both really and those were like the two like standout picks from Dicy's team, so he definitely had to get creative during some of the later games.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Shukadengo is interesting.
Yeah.
Especially with like the team sheets close, but I just don't like it was brought to Game 1 and got a bit of value, but I do think it kind of just couldn't like stand up to Excadrill repeatedly, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think
especially with Sinistra supporting and redirecting it.
I think I definitely understand the hesitation around like making a game plan around Goldango or T-Tar here when like there's so many threats to it, you know. But I do think we then see that as a result of like the mons that Dicy is trying to optimize here for this matchup end up just being lower value, right, than the Dragonite, the Excadrill. So it was definitely a tough one where I think it's interesting where you come in and like say your 20 or your 19 pointer has a really bad matchup against their 20 or 19 pointer. You're kind of coming in at a deficit right away. And unfortunately, just I think Treb made the correct decisions in Game 1 and 3. We don't got to talk about Game 2. The Snorlax was not going to happen. I think we had to leave the Snorlax behind a different time, a different place. I think we tried a little too hard to get that belly drum and Trick Room off.
There was an attempt.
But you know what? You're a game up. You want to get Snorlax on the board. I get it. But we saw the rally in Game 3, and Game 3 ended up being pretty dominant. So also, if I remember correctly, in Game 3, Primarina survived a Goodra Power Whip with like 5% or something, which I don't know the natural calcs, but I'm gonna assume that was like some physical invest on the Prim that ended up getting like really invaluable chip. So that ended up being an interesting calc to see, and I want to know if Treb invested any physical defense on that Prim, expecting like a power whip. Probably not specifically a power whip from Goodra, but still. But yeah, anything else to say about that one? I'm going to tab over to Teresa's stats
I think
here.
The most interesting thing is that despite Dragonite being in the top 4, somehow Yan Mega beats out Dragonite as the MVP of the match. I guess that game 2 really just gave Yan Mega a lot of credit for this one.
I mean, Yan Mega it got Tailwind up in, I'm pretty sure, all 3 games, I'm sure. It came to all 3 games. It was on the field for like most of them. Because it was kind of ignored, and with it being ignored, it was like air slashing constantly, and it was flinching a lot. So I honestly think that's a pretty accurate metric, where like D-Knight is the flashier mon here because it just kind of obliterated that game 3. But like Yan Mega was a constant presence and like clearly was a really high value mon.
Absolutely.
Oops. All right. Last match here, we have Sunder versus Kiara. So we have very interesting match with 2 spicy teams. We have Rain Parish, and then we have Sunder Technology trademark pending. Game 1 leads with Kiara showing off why Scraggy Arch is a really cool lead, with Scraggy using Beat Up into Arch to give it 4 stamina boosts. However, the stamina boosts do not help with Earth Power and Salt Cure, which murder Archaludon after 2 turns. So at that point, it was too much investment in this Arch that just died the next turn. Politoed comes in, gets a Decorate and Terra Waters, so it's doing its best Kyogre impression. But once a Trailblaze Zoomeril cleans that up, Kiara's team just doesn't have any firepower left. Game 2 is honestly hilarious. I love this game. The lead changeups are super interesting. Kiara ends up positioned fantastically after a really good swap into Dugtrio to be immune to a Thunder from Kilowattrel. And Arch looks positioned to just sweep the entire game. However, Sunder unveils his secret tech, which is tricking an Eject Pack onto Archaludon, and then swapping in Hydrapple the next turn, and when Hydrapple comes out, it lowers Archaludon's evasion and forces it to swap out with the Eject Pack. Unfortunately, the damage had already been done, and a Fissure hit from Dugtrio is just a Salt in the Wound. Game 3 is a really dominant display from Sunder, who dropped the technology for the scariest fucking Tumbleweed I've ever seen. Powered up by Kilowattrel's Tailwind, it O-code Politoed, and then does 95% to Archaludon with a Poltergeist. Rendering Kiara's 2 offensive mons completely useless and just removed right away. The game was over before Tailwind even ended. What did you think about this one, Carl?
I definitely think I'm a big fan of the Sunder technology. Honestly, I do think I did underrate Garganacl. It absolutely pulled its weight in game 1 to chip down the Archaludon a lot, and I think that's definitely good, especially with game 2 proving why Archaludon can be a threat. I don't really. I do think the trick into Super Sweet Syrup is definitely creative tech, but I'm not. I question its effectiveness comparatively to something like Red Card. I think might have just done what it needed to.
Yeah. I agree with that, because Red Card's a little more flexible, right? Where you could trick a Red Card and then hit the same turn. There's different ways to do it, but I give it shoutouts for creativity, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see if this Tailwind mode is going to end up being spec'd more into in future weeks, because I mean it was really dominant. Kilowattrel Brambleghast was kind of horrifying. I did not think Brambleghast would do 95% with a Poltergeist. That was that was genuinely wild. I paused it and I was like, is that right? Was that a crit? It was not. It just does that much.
No, that's just +1 Bramblegast and with Life Orb and Poltergeist. The Tumbleweed's just like that.
It was crazy to see. I think this set does show a weakness we cited with Kiara's team, where like it's a little one-dimensional, in the sense that I think Sunder knew exactly the threats to expect, right, and then prepared answers. Even if the cheesy creative answer didn't win him the game, still he probably did calcs for Archaludon. He had answers for Politoed. He just kind of knew what to expect coming in. And then like looking at the 6 Kiara brought here is like, what other game plan could she had for a mix-up?
I will say I don't really think I'm a big fan of Scraggy here. Like obviously it exists for the it exists for the beat up into Archaludon into max defense, but I think the game it got brought to, Archaludon was just not able to recover from being turn 1 salt cured and earth powered.
Yeah, I think like it's here for Intimidate against like, Azumarill and Bramblegast and whatnot, so I like understand it. However, when your team is like full of so much like support, like an offensive Intimidator like a Tauros or an Arcanine or like something like that, you could just see a lot more value from, as like, yes, it gets the Intimidate off, but it also backs you up a little bit. And then if you really want that beat up onto Arch, I just feel like there's other mons with like more utility afterwards, who would be better to see. But
yeah, I low-key even think the Doug Trio might have been a better beat-up support than Scraggy ends up being.
Probably, yeah. Doug Trio Fisher hit, by the way, so we cheer for that.
I don't cheer for Fisher hits. That's evil. And,
it is evil and twisted and sick. And then I'll tab over here to Teresa's stats one more time. Let's see. MVP from this would have been
absolutely Kilowatt Troll.
Oh yeah, there it is.
It's in the top 5. So it's in the top 5. Yeah, for turning that weed into a would not want to go against.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It was landing. I think it had thunder. I think it was landing stuff. I think it was Thunder Hurricane, so it really liked the rain being set by Kiara. And then it obviously powered up. I forget this mon's name constantly. Bramblegast to do Unholy Axe against Archaludons. So yeah, cool to see. All right, so that is all of our match rundowns. So to wrap it up here, we have some weekly awards that we're going to give out every week. Starting with, we have most valuable player, meaning most valuable Pokemon. I think honorable shout-outs, honorable mentions, definitely to Dorm's Arboliva.
Gnocchi's Arboliva.
Oh, so sorry. He's going to hate that one. Noki's Arboliva.
Oh my god. You cannot call him Dorm.
I'll never live this down. It's so over for me. I'm not going to edit this out either. I'm going to stand my ground. Shout-outs to Treb's Dragonite. I think those are all really strong contenders, but we did ultimately end up deciding to give it to Dorm's Malamar, our friend Malamar. We were talking about it statistically. Arboliva did outperform. However, what is an intangible, unmeasurable is the hype factor, and Malamar was very hype in that match. It was exciting to watch. It was unexpected, which so was Arboliva, but Malamar just had the X factor. Maybe it's the mind control, I don't know. But we did end up giving most valuable player to Dorm's Malamar. We have coach of the week, so a little different from most valuable Pokemon. I think this is really like who came in with like the best game plan, who piloted the best. Another honorable shout out here goes to Noki, who piloted, adapted really, really well. But we did end up giving it to Willow, because it just kind of felt like Willow had such a solid game plan coming in, and was one of the more dominant sets, one of the more dominant matches, one of the only 2-0s we saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we've got most creative build. So this is, a set that's really creative. I think this week was pretty obvious. Despite it not winning the game or the game it was in or really being relevant, it was still so cool to see. So we did give the most creative build to Sunder's Eject Pack trick for Rigorath. Play of the week. This one for me was pretty obvious because it was one of the only perfect turns I've seen executed. And it ended up just winning them the game really hard. So play of the week was Hivy's Switcheroo and Trick Room Reversal in turn 1 of game 1, which we talked about. We touched on briefly when we talked about that match, but I mean, it was after that, it was like the game was pretty much over. So
yeah,
super cool, perfect turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Flawlessly played that turn by Hivy, in my opinion, and I definitely think it deserves that shout out. Yeah.
Congrats, Hivy. And then finally, our last award we're going to do is a must-watch set. So if you're not watching everybody's games, this is the set that we would recommend going and watching. And
watch everyone's games, by the way.
Yeah, you should. You should, but basically our favorite set, at least. We're going to give it to Aury versus Square for the absolute nail-biting game 3, the really interesting styles, the back and forth, the creative sets, the creative terras, just like a really cool match to see. So those are all of our awards. That's all of our recaps. And I think that's everything we have. One last glance here at Teresa's stats. Was there anything else you wanted to say about this?
Not really. I think the fact that y'all have been saying that it's working well. It's nice to hear that my effort was not all for naught. And if anyone wants a closer look at the sheet, just let me know. I can send some screenshots your way.
No, for real. Get Teresa to yap about how these things are calculated, because she was DMing me about it and asking and was like, "Is this accurate?" And she had it within a single revision, and I was like, "Yeah, no, this is almost exactly how I would rank these Pokemon's effectiveness." So I've never seen anything like it. It's really impressive.
You can click over to
Teresa, honestly,
if you want to.
You did amazing.
If you want to click over to match data, you can see all the crap that I did.
This is the amount of effort that goes into. Are you kidding? For every game, it's genuinely insane. If you manage to keep this up for the whole league, Godspeed. That is really, really impressive. And I'm sure we will be getting updates from these moving forward. So
Sean just pulled all the spreadsheet nerds into one call and said,
yep.
This is a podcast now.
Yep. I said get all the people to play Pokemon so that they can generate data points for us to talk about.
Exactly.
That's my passion. That is my passion. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. We will see you probably soon, given that I think week 2 is done today. So yeah, we will see you probably soon for
get your games in, folks.
Yeah. Finish up your games. All right. Thank you guys, and everybody have a lovely night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.